without further ado, let's jump into our actual discussion here. If you're new to the channel, especially if you're checking us out from Worlds Beyond Number and you haven't seen us before, one thing we like to do is recap what we're going to be talking about for this long form content. And we'll cut out that recap of this podcast and we will host it separately on YouTube for your viewing convenience. So if you happen to find yourself on just the recap, but you want to hear Blake and I's full discussion on this episode, it'll be linked down in the discussion box below. But yeah, Blake, you want to take us off on this one?
So this was episode 2, and like we've disclaimed before. I don't know if you can use that word, by the way, but as we've disclaimed, there may be some details that are a little fuzzy, so feel free to let us know if we missed anything in the comments. But basically, the episode opens up with a continuing on this moment where Grandmother Ren has just passed. Her and her familiar Taro have both passed on to whatever comes next, and here we find Ame and Suvi in Grandmother Ren's room with this quest now to find Ursulon. The night with the moon is high, and a dark shadowy figure who we were told was walking down the road from the previous episode Stinger. This dark figure begins walking down the road and knocks on the door. It feels very ominous, very suspect. Ame tells Suvi to wait, goes downstairs and asks through the shut door, who is it? The person, in a very creepy, disturbing voice, announces that they are a traveler and that they're an old friend of Grandmother Ren they've come to say hello and pay their respects. Essentially, Ame says, well, who are you? And this person is offended and says, how dare you ask a traveler my name through a shut door? Ooh, yeah. And gives 3 names, not an actual name, but says, I am the Pilgrim of the Night. I think Traveler Under the Stars. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but yeah, it was. And then of those 4 things you said, there's some combination of them.
There was also like King something. There was a 3rd name as well. And I apologize, I can't remember which one it was. But and then basically Ame says, well, it's not a good time. My grandmother just died. And basically says Grandmother Ren's indisposed. This Pilgrim of the Night asks, well, when can I come back? And she says, sort of panicky, 1 year from now. And the individual says, you have 1 year, and poof, vanishes. And it becomes day. It's like the middle of the day again. So on top of this total craziness, all like the milk in the ice box has gone spoiled. There's things like that, like some kind of like decay and things that have just gone bad now. And Suvi is like, what the heck just happened? And Ame's like, who was that? I have no idea. Suvi actually makes, I think it was an Arcana check, or maybe it was a history or religion check, but basically remembers from her studies that beings of the spiritual world never give their true name because that allows you to assert power over them. So like Ursulon's father, the Great Bear, no one knows their true name, again, because that can be used to assert authority and power over an individual. But what she remembers of her study was that the scariest spiritual beings had 3 names. And this character we just met announced 3 names.
Yeah, I think it was just the more names they had,
right,
like, the scarier they were.
Right. Well, but specifically for her, she had read about one with 3 names that had terrified her, was the example I was giving. So beyond this, they decided to look at some of the things that Steele had given to Suvi to pass on to Grandmother Ren. There is a book of sort of like the constellations of the sky that they're not sure what to make of it. And then there's also these drawings of different disturbing beasts, and they realize that these are the forms that the mages of Gathmire, I think, or Gathmir can take, including one particular form that Suvi recognizes. It is the form that Yoren took back on the night that she last saw her parents. Suvi and Ame talk about this, and they say essentially like, well, the mages of Gathmir, aren't we at war with them? And Suvi basically says, well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but doesn't really share more beyond that. They know that before they can go find Ursulon, they need to first get Ame's familiar. That was part of the responsibilities given to her. And so they travel outside of the cottage up this small hill to this small stone statue of this spiritual being that watches over the nearby river or the stream. And they affectionately have called him Mr. Cook, Mr. Food. What was
Mr.
it?
Soup, Mr. Soup,
Mr.
because he's
Soup,
got
right.
like the offering bowl.
Yeah, the offering that if you go lay an offering at this statue, it's like a massive bowl. And so they lay some crackers down. Oh, and there's also one detail I forgot. Suvi, before they leave the cottage, Suvi actually goes up to Ame's room and discovers a small blue, I think it was a cloak that was hidden under the blankets. And this seems to be from the children's story, maybe a gift from Suvi to Ame that she has been holding on to. And
it
also in this moment,
it was the cloak that that her mother gave her from the prelude. You know, she wrapped her in it. It was that same one.
Okay, wow, cool. Also, looking out the window, she sees a fox coming out of the hen house with a dead chicken in its mouth. Kind of confused as to like it was just nighttime, now it's daytime. What's going on? Then fast forwarding back to this offering bowl, they put in some crackers. I think they put in like a thing of vodka or whiskey in it as well. And this spirit comes to life next to them. This small 2-foot figure who has a great accent and is like, oh yeah, they did a great job with my statue. It's basically like, what do you guys want? What's going on? And Ami's like, I think I'm supposed to get a familiar from you. And they share all this other stuff, that's crazy stuff that's happening. And the figure's like, I don't really know anything about any of that, but I can't help you with a familiar. And so Ame closes her eyes, and as she's thinking about this familiar and this ritual's beginning, that same fox comes out of the woods, sees the crackers in her pocket, sort of scurries up, and Ame instinctively grabs the fox and sort of poof, the fox becomes her familiar.
Yeah.
Immediately begins speaking to her. The fox is this is also an awesome character, by the way. The fox is freaked out because it's like, I'm talking. What is talking? And just a very, I don't know, ignorant's not the right word, but there's a conversation later when Ame says to the fox, like, can you give me some space, or can you leave, give me some, I can't remember what the phrasing was, but they were like, yeah, sure, I can do that. But like, didn't know what it meant. But I don't want to spoil that for your half. But anyway, they sort of strike a bargain that this fox is going to help Ame, and in return, Ame will give the fox as much chicken as it desires. So all that to say, they now know their next step is to travel to find Ursulon. And do you want to take it from there?
Yes, sir. Get my notes. Just accidentally closed them. But so now Ame having this fox familiar, like Blake said, they just kind of have this funny moment. But now that is completed, they decide to go back to the cottage and basically pack up to go on this journey to find Ursulon. So they head back, and Ame begins packing. But as this young witch who, for the most part, hasn't left this cottage for her entire adult life, is very confused on what to grab. She's like, should I bring the fire poker? And Suvi's like, no, we don't need a fire poker. So she's kind of stressed and anxiously stress packing. And during this, she does, and we'll talk more about this in the discussion, because I'm a little bit in the murkiness on exactly what takes place here. But she goes upstairs, and Grandmother Rin is kind of like, has turned white, or there's described something like that is happening. But next thing we know is that Ame has this urn with a rooster on it, and she actually takes it back up to the shrine, Mr. Soup's shrine, and I think performs a little ritual. Like I said, we'll touch more on this in our discussion. But after that, she comes back to the cottage for a bit more packing. And one thing of note that here is that we're told that Suvi notices an old shawl that she used to wear when she was over here that summer, that she used to like wrap herself in for comfort, and I think she grabs that. And then they're off to go find Ursulon, with the new fox familiar leading the way by following the scent of rosemary and pine. And it's here that we get a bit of a travel montage, with Brennan describing the different landscapes that they're passing through, and excuse me, often saying that the fox will suddenly just stop, turn and start going up a completely new direction, citing that he's found a fresher trail to follow. There were also times when he would comment that, oh yeah, the person we're tracking has come through here several times.
Right.
And more of that happens until eventually they arrive at this salty sea city of Joris. I think I'm saying that right. And there's like a lower portion of the city that is, connected to the sea, obviously. And then there is a higher cliffside portion of the sea. And this place is about 5 times bigger than Silbury. So Ame is pretty overwhelmed. Um, the fox continues to lead them into the city, into these like this farming land within the city. And here they can see that this traveling fair has been set up in this farmland, and they see signs for a performance, a stage performance of Sir Gallant and the Princess Bryony. And they make their way to it, and they kind of find themselves standing in the back of the audience as this play begins. And Professor J.B. Adelaide strides out kind of as the ringmaster, the showmaster of this play, and introduces it. And it's a very low budget production, kind of like high school play vibes with the cardboard cutout sets and
How
kind of
dare you?
lackluster costumes.
How dare you not
Um,
give justice to it?
yeah, my bad. But so there is a princess who is basically trapped in this tower, and she is looking for a knight to save her. And there's a knight on stage as well because she's been trapped by a monster. So the monster enters the stage, and it is none other than Ursulon. And the crowd begins to boo and yell. And this, of course, upsets Ame and Suvi. And so Ame yells at them to shut up. And Ursulon hears this and notices his old friends in the crowd and basically freezes. He is very ashamed and embarrassed. And there's kind of a moment where like the knight like tries to continue the play, but Ursulon basically is too caught off guard, and he eventually just runs off stage. Um, Backstage, he argues with Professor Adelaide and tells him like, I got to get out of here. I can't do it. And Adelaide's like, the show must go on. What are you doing? Ursulon explains that like there's some people here, and Adelaide is actually a bit more empathetic at this part. But then Ursulon's like, "Can I have my music box? Like, I gotta go." And Adelaide's like, "No, you can't have your music box. Like, we let you work here because you gave us that. Like, you're a freeloader. Like, no, you cannot have the music box back." So Ursulon takes off and just tries to hide away from Suvi and Ame. And the knight that he was on stage with, he kind of runs into him. He's like, "Yo, Ursulon, what's going on?" And Ursulon's like, "Hey, there's people here. They can't see me." And the knight's like, "Okay, I'll run interference for you." So the knight runs into Ame and Suvi, and he's like, "Yeah, I haven't seen him. What are you talking about?" And Suvi shatters the glamour on her staff, like revealing she is a wizard, and is like, "Where is he?" Basically doing an intimidation
Yeah.
check. And the knight just like, "Okay, sorry." He just steps out of the
Yeah.
way.
It's like, right this way.
So they continue kind of searching through these tents, and they do actually find Ursulon. And yeah, he is just very deeply shamed and embarrassed that they have seen him like this. And obviously Ame and Suvi are his friends, so Ame like tries to comfort him, but Suvi's like, I'm not good at the emotional stuff. And she actually finds out that Professor Adelaide has the music box, so she's like, "I'm gonna go take care of that. Ame, you handle the emotional damage here." So Suvi steps out, goes and confronts Professor Adelaide in his office, again intimidates him, and he quickly folds like a wet napkin, and she actually does go and retrieve the music box. Meanwhile, though, Ame and Ursulon are talking, and excuse me, the moment Blake alluded to a bit earlier with the fox, Ame's like, "Hey, can you give us a moment?" And the fox is like, "Yeah, sure." And he just stands there. It's like, "No,
Yeah,
can
that's
you
right.
leave?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, sorry." So they get their little private talk, and Ursulon again just explains that he's kind of embarrassed, like this isn't what he thought he was going to do with his life. And Ame, of course, is being a good friend, but she quickly fills Ursulon in on what's happened and is like, "Hey, we need Wavebreaker. We need that sword." And Ursulon says, "I don't have it. I
Ooh,
actually
about
had to
that.
trade it away for shelter a while back." And she's not upset with him at all. And she just says, "You know what? With the sword gone, we now have your quest." And that's actually where the episode ends, unless I missed anything.
No, it's great.
Okay.
And if you're watching just the recap, check the description for the whole episode discussion. And we want to know what you think about the episode too, so check that out as well. Will, what'd you think?